Hmm. Hello, Foxa J. I'm glad you could make it. And Madfinger, greetings. Gnostics first to show up. I like that. And hopefully we'll see Moose. And, of course, all the others. And, of course, I'll come on camera quite shortly. Actually, I should probably mute my mic. Hello, Seven. While I move it a little closer to me. I think that should pick up my voice a little better. Yes, you were missed, Foxadre. You certainly were missed. And so we have about another 10 days before the new lunar cycle. Okay, I'm going to come on camera now. Hello, Meandering Mystic. Probably should have adjusted my hair after I put the before I put the camera on, but now you're going to get to see it. Oh, gee. Anyway. So, what are we gonna do? Should be, I think it could be a very interesting live stream tonight. Certainly waiting for a little. Hey, hello, Hanuman. Okay, but you're logged on and it counts. So, for those of us who were part of Sophia's dreaming, you might have noticed that Gaia, her body, the body of the planetary animal mother, Pam for short, is becoming quite active. And Pele has been a little more measured. Hello, Deborah. Pele has been a little more measured in how she does things in Hawaii, as she normally is. But the volcano of fire, which is what the name of the volcano in Guatemala is called in Spanish. I mean, that's, I'm translating it from, I think it's a Volcano del Fuego. That one didn't open up with delicacy. It opened up with fury. And Pele, in many ways, I believe, because she actually is a being that many of the native Hawaiians still work with. They work with that particular manifestation of our mother, that autonomous aspect known as Pele. There's a certain regard for the human species there, but in places that are colonialized, like Guatemala, by Europeans, even though a majority of the people are still, genetically indigenous, the culture of the colonials has largely been inserted into their psychology. And reverence for things, or at least respect, in a real sense of the word, for things like volcanoes, is, from what I can tell, I'm not on the ground, so I'm looking from a distance, but from what I can intuit or just pull apart from the information I do have to work with, I do not perceive a culture there that has any kind of communication or dialogue with their volcanoes. And so that volcano opened with great fury. And there are dead people from that fury. Hello, Jessica. That fury, I'll just say in my opinion, I'll put it that way. That way it's an opinion. Hello, Raksha. Greetings, Raksha. The fury that the volcano of fire opened up with in Guatemala, in my opinion, and not alone in an opinion, but I'll state it as my own opinion, is a taste of things to come. Sophia's correction has been ongoing in its own process for some time, but there's a lot of correction that needs to be done. And I believe part of the, let's say, the slow approach to fury was so that people could decide in their hearts who they are and where they are on this planet. Are they part of the dreaming, or are they part of the nightmare? Those who are part of the dreaming knows them. Those who are part of the nightmare, the dreaming knows them as well. But knows them in a different fashion. The archontic, the internet, an archontic creation, which we are using to our advantage because we are creative, has certainly allowed the dissemination of the information about Gaia's awakening and correction to be heard by just about anybody who wanted to. It was there to be heard. And hello, Sam. And there are probably a large majority of people who certainly heard about it but disregarded it, either because it didn't fit their belief system or they didn't like the messenger. There's a lot with the source material delivered by John Lamb Lash, the Gnostic teacher on the internet. And as far as I can find, the Gnostic teacher currently, and it will be that way until some other people can be able to command the syntax and the body of knowledge, which would include celestics. The ability to read the sky as a part of one of the ways that Pam communicates with us. Pam is planetary animal mother. Another way of calling Sophia by another name. And when I do use the term Sophia, I like it really to mean in many ways, besides the planetary animal mother, the Greek word wisdom. because I believe that is a really important part of the name term Sophia. It means wisdom. So to embrace Sophia, to embrace the planetary animal mother, is to embrace wisdom. To know about wisdom and not embrace it is folly. And I do believe that folly is about to become a little costly. To some. I was thinking about, I knew kind of how I would begin this live stream. And I was saying, oh, some people like, oh, that's fear porn. There is no fear for those who embrace wisdom. For those who embrace wisdom, there is gnosis. But like I said, I express that this is the beginning of fury as an opinion, because I feel that's probably the softest way to state it, as an opinion. To try and lend more gravitas to it could, in fact, be misleading. Although I don't think it would be. But as an opinion, it can't mislead. Hello, crazy beautiful. I listened to somebody who I'm willing to listen to, not agree with everything, but I don't, in most cases, I'm not looking to agree. I'm looking for data. I'm looking for good data. And then what I or anybody else does with that data is what the purpose of data is, to be interpreted. Following people, in many ways, can be misguided. Because, if sometimes when you follow somebody, it's everything they say. That's why you follow them. But I think more and more of us will usually give a caveat of, I follow what this person says, and but I don't agree with everything they say, and that's quite healthy. But I don't follow people. There are people who, when I have listened to them, I often find have some good data for me to work with, to consider, to meditate with, to journey with, to go into my, I would call kind of, my connection in my heart with the planetary animal mother, to receive instruction on some of the data that I've gotten. So one of the more interesting persons of data, depending on the subject, is Cliff High. Cliff High is known very much for his Alta reports and Bitcoin. He now doesn't comment on Bitcoin, which I think is a good thing. I'm going to have to clear my throat, so I'm going to mute my mic for a moment. But one of the ideas that he works with, for him, it's not a belief. It's how he understands the planet Earth. Okay. I think he might have some opening for a Gaia theory, kind of like Lovelock did. I'm not so sure about his telestai, or let us say Gnostic interpretation of what Gaia is. But one of the things he said repeatedly is about the expando Earth, or the expanding Earth, as opposed to the moving tectonic plates, the way geologists posit it and explain it. And of course, one of the things I really, besides having a sense of that, it kind of feels right, and when I have meditated on it, I don't get much in the way of correction around it, as far as a concept. And part of the expando Earth theory is that rather than a molten iron core, the Gaia has a plasma core. Now, one of the reasons that really resonates well with me is because Gaia started as plasma. She arrived, when Sophia arrived here and turned into the Earth, she was plasma. So it makes total sense to me that as she formed the Earth around her plasmic being, that she would retain at the core of the planet she formed into her plasmic identity. So but we'll just work with what Cliff feels is science, and I feel, from the scientific point of view, that there are a lot of certain rays, cosmic rays and gamma rays, things that just blow through your body and generally would even go through the Earth themselves, and where they might penetrate the mantle and other things like that. The electrostatic nature of plasma. And much of the nature of plasma can be picked up from the Thunderbolts project, as far as the nature of things like Birkeland currents and plasma in general. And one of the properties of plasmic balls is that rather than gamma rays and other cosmic rays that normally completely pass through rock and other things, the very electrostatic nature of the plasma captures these rays. And then in a reverse EMC squared type of equation, instead of energy converting into mass converting into energy, in this case, energy becomes mass. The captured particles, numbering in the billions of gamma ray, or probably more like trillions, of captured gamma and other kind of cosmic rays, transforming into matter, would make the planet grow. Now, one of the beautiful things of having been part of the Gaian navigation experiment and having John Lamlash as the teacher is that in 2011, when the whole ascension or destruction scenario of the winter solstice, 2012, December 21st, 2012. Probably the beginning of David Wilcock becoming a buffoon. Because if anybody remembers what he was saying about 2012, it's something he wishes we wouldn't remember. Trust me on that one. We in the Gaian navigation experiment understood what that meant, and that meant that in our galaxy, which our solar system travels through, there are the galactic arms. And for just to keep it a very general, the galactic arms, which are known as the Canoma, full of kind of just quote-unquote dead matter, non-conscious matter, in the normal sense that we understand consciousness. The orbit of our solar system kind of came out of the arms, rose above the thickness or the fog of the arms, and then had a direct connection with the galactic center. This is where Sophia's awakening began in real earnest, and then also allowed her to connect to the pleroma again, in a direct, kind of a direct fashion. And so that's what December 21st, 2012 meant for us Teleste, or the Sophianic narrative Gnostics. So now Cliff High also seems to, when he speaks about, you know, the intensity, the fact that the sun is not yellow but white, and the intensity makes a lot of sense to me, because if the orbit of our solar system is no longer quite in this thick, let's call it stardust, just for a term, okay? If what is between the Earth and the sun is now not so dense, well, that's gonna change how the sunlight hits the Earth. So even though when Cliff High was saying these things, he wasn't putting them in a what I would call Gnostic or Teleste or Sophianic narrative terms. What he was he was using observations and certain data and interpreting them in ways that I had other language for, that we, as part of the Gaian navigation experiments, those of us who are aimed, those of us who have been a part of the Sophianic narrative and part of Sophia's dreaming, would have different language for. But the observations, once again, there's, you know, you observe something and then you would have how you would interpret that observation. So he has observations that I have slightly different interpretations of, but they're kind of basically the same observations. Now, I've been certainly, I managed to kind of endure a little bit of a video about how people are, and plants are not doing well with the new, less occluded sunlight. Some people have, you know, been getting sunburned through their clothing after just minutes of being in the sun, getting burned. Mothers who slather their children in sunscreen, their children still getting bad burns. I've never been much of a fan of sunscreen. Generally, when I do get I like to get my sun not on beaches so much as like lake beaches. So when I've had enough sun, I retreat under the trees that usually grow fairly close to the relatively small sandy area of a lake. You know, judicious use of the sun, and as my skin darkens up, I get more and more impervious. And but the interesting thing is, I have been spending some time in the sun. I'm matter of fact, I've been doing some walks, and I end up, and although I have very, very light Indian cloth clothing that hardly would block much in the way of sunlight, and I have my exposed face and my exposed hands, and I'm walking in the sunlight, during some of the stronger sun hours. And I don't even have as much color as I normally might be picking up. And so there's like one group of people who seem like no matter how little sun they get, they're getting roasted. And then people like myself who, acknowledging that the sun certainly has greater strength, don't find it an angry sun. And So my take on part of what might be this is I'm living in Sophia's dreaming. And in her dreaming, what is happening is quite natural. And so you're in a vibrationally different world as you move through the world. And so I feel that people who are connected to the earth, at least, you know, have some real regard for the earth, even if they haven't fully embraced or partially embraced the Sophianic narrative, are going to be treated a little more gently. Those who are kind of letting science guide them, inform them about the world around them, letting them do all the data interpretation. I think science is great at bringing data. I think they're certainly entitled to have an interpretation of their data, but I don't think their interpretation needs to be our interpretation. I have to clear my throat again. So with that said, it's a good time to know who you are and where you are on this planet. A very good time. Now, with regards to the plants, that plants seem to be suffering quite a bit, or a lot of plants are suffering quite a bit from the new sun. And apparently there's like I don't know if it's true, but Cliff High is reporting, according to science, and not their interpretation, their data, that and he's a fair scientist himself, that there used to be UVA and UV bands of ultraviolet light. There now apparently is a band they're calling UVC. Now, I think that normally the plants would be able, just like those of us who seem to be adapting to the new sun just fine. I think the plants would be adapting to the new sun just fine, because they're part of the dreaming also, if they weren't being poisoned with all the aluminum. I mean, I know there are other things, but the aluminum in this that's now showing up in the soil and being pulled into the roots of these plants and killing them from their heart outward is, I think, compromising their ability to epigenetically just deal with things naturally. I think they're under such duress from the attack from the skies of the dropping aluminum that in many ways they're being hurt terribly. They're under enormous stress. They're dying from the inside. That's a key to insects that burrow into trees to help the tree die quicker. That's a signal for birds like woodpeckers who live on those bugs to peck away. And so we're having, there is, like as I mentioned in a stream last week, ecocide is occurring. Because, I mean, the plants are really connected into the dreaming. But again, the soil that they live in, the microbes that keep that soil healthy for them, are under constant attack. And so I believe that now the other thing that I think is also might be playing into people who are not doing very well with the new sun is their GMO diets. I've been eating organic food for almost 30 years now. And anytime it isn't organic, trust me, I make sure it is GMO free certified, and there isn't much of that food that I eat. There's a few I forget what, there's a few things here, a couple of noshes that I like, that I make sure are GMO free. But many people are still eating lots of fast food. The fast food will most likely be GMO. There's all of these soy additives that, and most of the soy, I think like 90% of the grown soy, or a high percentage of the grown soy, is GMO soy. So even vegetarians who are not being strict about organically sourced, and you know, organic can certainly take its hits, but man, it's a big, it certainly beats GMO. I think that in many ways, just like the trees are being compromised by aluminum poisoning, that many of human bodies are being compromised by GMO poisoning. And so as we go through this transitional time, that the people whose bodies are nourished by the virus, and the way the virus does things, and the way the virus does farming and creates frankenfoods. Hello, Enjoy Being. And hello, RC. And hello, Darcy. That it meant that food in their system is so dominating their cellular structure that even the epigenetics of Gaia, of the planetary animal mother herself, are not available to them. Hello, Amanda. So I'm just going to take a little breather, because that was kind of like the biggest beginning I had, that there's a fury happening, and the Volcano del Fuego, or the volcano of fire in Guatemala, as opposed to Pele and her volcanoes in the Hawaiian Islands, have kind of announced, and so it begins. Another title I work with, two of the titles I worked with last week. So it begins, and Ecocide. And so here we are, kind of in continuation of that dialogue. The planet needs to be cleansed. What is going on cannot continue. And any of you who, let's just call it that, those thick, greasy, persistent contrails, let's call it that. And we might even use that as a term when we're trying to call people's attention to that there's two kinds of contrails up there. The ones that kind of dissipate as a jet moves along, and then persistent, thick, heavy, greasy contrails. Don't challenge them. Don't give them the trigger word, chemtrails. Don't do that. All defenses will go up. Use the language that they use. Oh, those are just contrails. Yes, but why are there two kinds of contrails? Why do ones kind of dissipate like the water vapor that they are, that's forming in the cold temperatures of the upper atmosphere? And why are the other ones so persistent? Why are they so thick and spreading and kind of greasy? What's up with those contrails? And then maybe, because I mean, right now you try and get people to acknowledge that there's fuckery in the skies, and especially when you're using the language that they have been told by their programmers is nonsense and conspiracy theory, then you have to find language that doesn't shut them down right away. They haven't been programmed to address contrails that behave differently than other contrails. They haven't had that programming. So there's a chink in that programmed armor, and we can exploit that. Because one of the beginnings is to actually have somebody looking up there and go, maybe something isn't right in our skies. Metanoia. I love it when you talk dirty like that, Raksha. Hurricane season is upon us. I mean, I think this is one of this hurricane that they had just recently in the Gulf about a week or so ago was one of the earlier hurricanes I can recall. It happened in May. And if that was the first named storm, one has to wonder what's behind that. What does the full hurricane season look like? Now, another interesting, at least interpretation of data from Cliff High regarding the UVCs, or the ultraviolet rays that are falling to the C band as opposed to ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B, is that it evaporates water far more rapidly than than typical ultraviolet. And I have to admit, we've had a fair amount of soaking. We didn't have heavy rains, but we had constant rain here for a while, and the ground was very, very wet. I think we've had 2 days of sun, and the ground is almost parched and dry already. That's really rapid evaporation. And part of what he spoke of, again, if he's correct, is that this ridiculous evaporation from these I'm going to call them UVC, ultraviolet C band rays, is that they allow for enormous amounts of water to enter the atmosphere, what he called almost like atmospheric rivers, and in certain cases atmospheric lakes. Whether he's correct about that, I don't know, but I'm willing to hold that. I can hold that without having to put it on a shelf. I can play with that a little bit. But if there's any veracity to that concept, that the amount of water that can be pulled off the ocean and placed into the atmosphere is many times greater than it has been. Well, if you know anything about how hurricanes generate and what they feed off of, differences in temperatures, but also moisture. We could be in for a hurricane season like has never been seen. Then, of course, if we have more volcanoes going off, and if you watch Dutch Since, who is kind of like the geological geek of the internet, and then, of course, if you're just in tune with our mother, with our planetary animal mother, you kind of sense that things are picking up. So if greater moisture is entering the air, and volcanoes are putting more fine particulate that moisture can also marry with, one can seize the potential for hurricanes and thunderstorms and rain dumpages like we haven't seen before. Raksha and I do communicate, even off, when we're not in a stream. I would say whatever Raksha types tonight, please do not regard as just another chatter. another person he's putting his thoughts in there. But I would just say that Raksha has some things to say. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so I'm going to take just a little pause here. I'm going to look at the chat, make sure I didn't miss anybody to say hello to. No, everybody that I see that's currently, and we have 22 participants, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and one of them is me. So 7 people are currently listed as participants. So, but I do believe I said hello to Darcy and Amanda, and of course our friend from New Zealand. Enjoy being. Interesting enough, Cliff High did speak about Yellowstone. If you want to hear the full 2 hours of what Cliff High had to say, it's on like a Leak Project video from a day or two ago. Hello, Oswald and Ellie. I think it's. I mean, again, it's a man with a good mind, and I don't see, listening to him isn't. I don't think it's going to create any great pollution as long as you're just listening and not like loading. I think he's safe to listen to. Realizing that he's coming from a narrative that's a little different than some of us are involved in. The dreaming, Sophia's dreaming. Hello, Akash. Why don't you can put in a question in now, because I'm taking a break, so this is one of the better times to do it. Yeah, I fell asleep towards the end. I didn't hear about the Antarctic stuff. I have to give it another listen. A little stretch here. I'm waiting for a question to come in, and besides, as I said, I was taking a little bit of a mind break. Don't want to. I want to stay with my own personality as present as possible. Because if I get into certain streams, I start to take a back seat. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, one of the things is, when it comes to DW or CG, I think the best thing we can do is not even mention them. Like make them go. They go. When they're not in our conversation, our language, they become irrelevant and they start to disappear. But I'll have to agree with you, Madfinger. I just won't mention his name. But I think comparing he who I will not mention as a turd works fine. Well, Akash, I really think that the consciousness shift is the way that we solve many problems at once, because that is the problem. Consciousness is our problem. Darcy, I'm not. I'm doing a music stream this Saturday night, and I've never heard of Hero of the Day by Metallica. That's not one of my bands. Not that I think there's anything wrong with them, but you know, I mean, I grew up with better music. Sam, I think the best way to make them pay is to ignore them and not insert them into our dialogue. There is no bad publicity. As long as you're being talked about, you're still alive and kicking. I'm not interested in listening to any Metallica, no. And my music stream is going to be this Saturday, not this stream. So, okay, let me so Akash, yeah, that's kind of what I mean, even when people are coming in with, oh, you know, the bad guys are doing this, the bad guys are doing this. It's like, enough with what they're doing. What are we doing? Are we waking up or just calling ourselves woke as fuck? Hello, Rufus Cat. But but back to you, Sam. To me, the best way to make these people pay for their fuckery is to ignore them, to not even discuss them in bad ways. They're just disappear them from language. Disappear them from our consciousness. That would be the best way to make them pay, and then they can have their little coterie of lost people, and they can all play in the sandpen. Hello, Peace Hope. You know, Sam, I call it Kali's necklace. There are a lot of, I believe there are a lot of heads I'd like to see on Kali's necklace. When it comes to major fuckery, he's a nobody. The CEO of Nestle's. I mean, I don't want to name a whole bunch of names, but I mean, there are people who are behind the Echo side. They are fitting ornaments, new faces on Kali's necklace. You know, in many ways, the damage that people like, I think that a big part of the anger with certain of these, let's call them the blue chicken crowd, a big part of the anger is how many people fell for that shit to begin with. And rather than owning the fact that they were there eating the shit, now they want to be mad at the people who fed them the shit that they ate. And that's not a very honest way of doing things. The biggest problem we have is us as a collective consciousness. And pointing fingers at the bad guys, which makes us victims. I am nobody's victim. You cannot be empowered and be a victim at the same time. You're either empowered or you're a victim. And I choose empowerment. And I know a lot of people are choosing empowerment. And most importantly, choosing wisdom. And if I were speaking Greek, or at least using the Greek word for wisdom, and mixing it with my English, I would say choosing Sophia. But I do recognize the pain of being taken. But that's a war. That's to be empowered. That becomes the warrior's wound. It will heal. Yeah, it hurts to get wounded, but a warrior will survive the wounds. Akash, you bring up a really good point that has to do with whose planet is this anyway? The geological changes and the different shifts that might actually require populations to perhaps move about on the planet. If we had freedom instead of a government, we could move. This is our planet. But currently, it's not our planet because of the mind virus and the city-states and governments that control borders and don't allow people to just move freely and then deal with the population that's there. But without all the inflammatory language, we could work things out. Not saying there might not be, there might be a few burials required, but it wouldn't, nothing like even a small battle in a real war. Their magic is weak, Seven Serpents. And even their more potent ones, I mean, we outnumber them. That's the whole thing, is there are so few. We are not magical currently as a group. We're not thinking magically. So the counter magic is left to the hands of a few. Where if there were multiple participants in different kinds of counter magic, their few, if there are any powerful black magicians amongst them, would be so fucking overwhelmed they wouldn't be able to deal with the incoming. And that's the whole thing. It's time for them to have to start dealing with some incoming, because in the language of these communities that are, who are, let's call themselves the alternative communities, they're always talking about what's incoming to us. Where the fuck is our incoming? Or our outgoing, so they're dealing with incoming. And much of this is psychological. It's not ordinance in the regular sense. It's psychological ordinance. Much of it. I mean, again, one of the main reasons why they can keep on spraying us like roaches from the sky is because psychologically they've locked down people who look up and don't see it. The emperor has clothes on for them. And the rest of us see we see an ugly naked butt. So this is why this warfare is psychological. It is at the level of consciousness. So there was an interesting piece. I don't know if it's news or hearsay yet, because I haven't had a chance to confirm it. Until I can confirm something, it's hearsay. Could be even rumor. And I don't like to gossip, because that's for small minds. But I heard that there's been kind of like, I guess they're not calling it an emergency meeting, but I heard that suddenly there's been a scheduled meeting of the Bilderbergers. Now for some people it's like, ooh, the Bilderbergers a meeting. It's like, yeah, I think it's in Turin. I think it's in Italy, and I think it's in Turin, Italy is where I think I saw it somewhere in a live chat. And I even responded to it. I said, ooh, sounds like an invitation to counter magic. I accept. So just think, imagine if we're really thinking magically and we hear there's a meeting of the Bilderbergers and where it's going to be, we certainly know where to direct our magic now, don't we? I mean, a whole bunch of shitheads are gathering in one place. I mean, to me, that is an invitation. And so that's why when I heard about it, if it's true, that's an invitation to me, and I accept the invitation. Venice, Italy. Okay, yeah, it's good to have your coordinates. I mean, you could pull out a map just for focus. Just pull out a map. Focus your conscious in there. I mean, some of the simpler things is, I don't know, how about all the toilets back up? Yeah, mind nuke, but I mean, just like, just be creative. I mean, the food goes bad. One of their high-level servants has some kind of communicable disease that spreads to everybody who eats all that fancy food. I mean, there's just we can be devious. I mean, we've been identifying all their devious shit. Well, it's just like, how about payback's a bitch, motherfuckers? How about it? Now, here's one of the things I have to be open for, and I hope we all are open for. Can we assume, should we assume, is it safe to assume that every single person that shows up at the Bilderberg meeting is still in their old heart, and that maybe just somehow, someone, 1, 2, or whatever, actually has had a change of heart? But that's a dangerous group to cross. I mean, if you're in that in-group and you're not aligned and you show it, that is really bad for your health. Okay, so somebody says it's happening. Now, it is happening this June. Hello, Blue Blood Jam. So if it's happening this June, and I think it's happening a little later in the month, I think it's happening after the new moon. I think, does anybody know that, whoever put in that it's in Venice, did you hear a date on that? I think I heard somewhere like either in the late teens, I think it was in the late teens, and the new moon is on the 13th, which is the early teens. Now you might say, well, what did that, what did that wake up in me? When I heard it and I said, ooh, after the new moon. Now, if things are progressing, we did have a double shift because the new moon arose in Taurus each time, so that meant Bhudevi and Green Tara were on shift. But if the next moon occurs in the twins, that would put Bagalamukhi on shift. Oh, it's June 7th to 10th? Those fuckers. Those fuckers. Thank you. No, actually, I guess you saved me from going off on something that would not apply. One can only wet themselves a little bit over the thought of it. The reason why I was hoping it was happening after that, just because again, it's a little bit of counter magic. If Bagalamukhi was on shift when they had this, part of her magic is that those who wish to lie either have their tongues tied, betray themselves, don't have the language skills that they normally have, and those who would speak the truth are given great strength of heart to speak their truth, which is why I was going, that there might be people in that group who, in fact, are not on board with the fuckery, and but they know that because they're in that group, to not go along is just so bad for their health. Thank you, Fox Dre. I know that you really are on this. That's why I'm always glad you're here, because I know that you're doing really well with the Celestics, and I really respect that about you. But yes, what Madfang is saying, you can send them thoughts through time or space. I mean, imagine all the people who, or make up the alternative community taking it seriously, and they go, I've never really, done a whole lot of magical thinking. This doesn't require journeying. Know they're there, look on a map, and direct your rage at that building they're in. You don't have to pick on the whole city. They meet at a place. Get Google Earth, for God's sakes, and for God's sakes, and find the building and blast it. I mean, if a bunch of people meditating in the city can bring down the crime rate when they're meditating for sweet things, what would a couple of thousand, 10,000 people wanting people to taste their own medicine. I mean, conceive of if you're maybe conceive of a mirror, where just basically this is what you've been sending to me. Well, I'm sending it back to you. Use your imagination. Use the goddess-given imagination to what your idea of counter magic is. Just one counter magic might make it a little bit easier for their defense team to deal with. All kinds of wild stuff coming in to their magical defenders would keep them probably have them overwhelmed. And this to me, this is like a kind of a step. You know, here we go. I refuse to I call them the goobs, because they're the real hidden hands behind goobermints, and sometimes you even have goobermint goobs that go there. The worst that could happen is that no effect. But, how about we kind of just start thinking that we are the magical children, as adults, and we're going to start experimenting. They've been experimenting on us. How again, millions, or at least as far as those of us in the alternative community, let's get magical on their asses. Everybody know, they practice black magic. But there's a few of them, and their magic is relatively weak. It isn't. I mean, they might have a few skilled ones, but they rely on all kinds of silliness. We have the planetary animal mother behind us for our magic. So I think it was Oswald asked me what I think of remote viewing. I think it's something that I've listened to a little bit of it, but again, they're covering stuff like, the Exodus. And they're covering topics I don't give a shit about. There seems to be, I think there's data there. There is some interesting data. Whether or not it's legitimate data, I don't know. So see, the thing is, we need focus. And there is shamanic practices, there is earth magic, there's a lot of stuff that we know is real. So for me to even play too much with remote viewing and stuff, it's like, why? They're conducting experiments. We have experiments we can conduct on tried and true methods. And I think that's where we should have focus, and we should focus on where our talents are and where we have support from the planetary animal mother. Oh, mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, Blue Blood, I don't know what you're trying to do here. Please. We don't need to. There's an overview. There's a criminal class. They're criminals. Titles only hide them more often than not. Criminals are known by criminal behavior, and a criminal is a criminal. Yeah, Madfinger, you're also you and Rockshow are playing some good tag team here tonight. With really thoughtful chat inserts. Yes, they are psychopaths. They are. Yes, Oswald, I do. And that's why they need to be overwhelmed, you know. Again, if they had a bunch of, if they had, let's say 100 armed guards around the place and 10,000 armed people showed up, those armed guards wouldn't have a chance now, would they? So that's what it is. We have the numbers. But we have to think of ourselves as a force. We have to think in unity. We have to have some focus. They're too small in numbers to be taken seriously by unified people, by human species uniting. It's game over. And that's why they sow so much division. And it's only that by buying into the division that they keep people separated. I've had a few awakening, Akash Patel. I've had a few awakening moments. My first awakening moment, and I recall a little, it was pretty substantial, was in 1988 when I had a spontaneous Kundalini rising 6 months after I quit drinking alcohol. It was completely dry, and I had been drunk for most of my drinking years. And it was almost as soon as I quit drinking, I started working with vibrational remedies, gem elixirs, things like that, and started undergoing a process. At the time, I was only vaguely aware even of the chakras, but I was aware of kind of processing a whole bunch of new information and then jumping to another level of process and another level and another level. And I really wasn't quite sure at that time. I hadn't really got myself versed in chakras. I was not aware that because if I had known the consciousness, I would have been able to identify that these were consciousness steps. And then, of course, after you get to a certain point, all of a sudden the Kundalini blows outside of your head quite unexpectedly, and you're a bit of a nutcase for a few weeks in the most blissful place. I mean, there was a real connection with nature. I mean, I felt like everything was alive. The trees knew me. The sky was smiling at me. It was really blissful, but I was nuts. I was psychotic. Not, and I call psychosis a swelling of the psyche, an inflammation of the psyche. So psychotic doesn't mean murderous. It just means an inflammation of the psyche. I like that, Sam. Well, the title of tonight's live stream, "What are we going to do?" What are we gonna do? Is actually an operating title of a song I have all the music for, but no words. And I was hoping that after tonight's stream, I might be able to then get to a pen and paper and actually be able to write down the verses for a song based on the conversations that we're having here, what I'm saying, what you people in the chat are saying. And so to finish my answer with you, Akash. Nice name, by the way. So that was my first awakening. I would say my second major awakening occurred in 2014, in the late 2014, because my very first video on this YouTube channel, which is known as Paradigm Disruption, Gaia Sophia is our God. And of course that is a gender neutral term because it's about a space, about a psychological space that is occupied one way for better or worse. But the beginning of a really, really good awakening was the beginning of the Gaian navigation experiment. For me, I think I joined in that. It's either late 2010 or early 2011. I forget. I'm not... Dates for me, in many ways, once I use them for coordinates in time space. Once I've kind of, after the dates have passed me, they kind of become coordinates I might not ever use again. So I don't even work to retain them. And so that began that period, and then I had a profound experience as I was meditating, as I was putting myself to sleep, and was connecting. Hello, Vern. Good to see you. And was connecting with the planetary animal mother, and kind of got some images. And then I was outside having a smoke, and I was kind of like, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. And I got the equivalent of a voice message from Pam, our planetary animal mother. And the voice message basically said, you want direct, like almost like one-on-one, like having a conversation. And so the message said, the message was in the first person. It was as if like it was given in the syntax of a personal message. Although the interesting thing is that the words themselves, as the words came in, had paragraphs around each word. But I'm going to stick more to the very short voice message of, if I were to speak with you directly, your personality would shift in a way that would make you unstable. Okay, so I buffered there for a second. If I got the message was, if I connected with you directly, you would become unstable. It would not be for your own good. And that was basically the voice message. With that came all kinds of understandings of what those words meant for me. And and as usual, what else is our planetary animal mother but wisdom itself? So the words were actually, were wisdom itself. And that kind of calmed me down, because first of all, I'd gotten a real direct transmission, but just one removed. Could say maybe like, if you let's call it a higher self concept, or our own observer, kind of like a part of me that isn't attached into my personality, was able to get like a verbatim sentence or something, and then deliver it to me. So it was personalized. It just was one removed. And so that began it, and that was, I think that might have been around November or December of 2014. And so then on the new moon of January 20th, 2015 was a new moon, and that's when I put up my very first video on ModWiz 125 channel, which was Paradigm Disruption, Gaia Sophia is our God. So that is, I would consider that there wasn't a singular point of what I considered to be a true awakening, as opposed to some very profound awakening that happened when I had my spontaneous Kundalini rising in 1988. But it began with participating in the Gaian navigation experiment, and really came to more of a focus when I started making my videos in 2015. Then I got involved with some other things and got a little distracted from my inner work. And then fortunately John came back online with the Mandela Effect Decoded. I caught that a little bit after he started it, and I went back and caught it, and then we have Radio Gaianing that he has also been doing, just hasn't done it for a month or so. But when he came back online, I kind of got back in line. I hadn't really so much lost a narrative as I was not making it my focus every day, because I was surrounded by people who were not, very much involved with people not in the narrative at all. And so things really started, I got really recoalesced and refocused. I don't know, about a year or so ago, whenever the Mandela Effect Decoded YouTube thing happened, about a month or so after he began uploading his videos. And then it's just been like daily practice. And then not the last new moon, the new moon before the last new moon, I went out and did my first sighting of the new moon in the western sky as the sun was going down, and connected with the Dakini shift, or the mood of the planetary animal mother, as it shifts with lunar cycles. And boy, that, I would say, that began a whole new cycle, and it also really changed how I do my live streams. I started my live streams before that, but once I started engaging in that aspect, to me, the real deeper and dynamic aspect of planetary tantra, boy, things have really been awakened and cleared out, and continue to be cleared out. And observing the new moon is going to be a lifelong practice, and learning the sky. And that's, I've been going, when I go out for my cigarettes at night, I'm looking at the sky, seeing what I can recognize. Then I come inside and I have Stellarium, which is a program of the night sky set for the coordinates of where I live. So when I turn on Stellarium, I can come inside and I'm looking at the sky I just looked at. And I'm not in the most rural area, so I don't see as many stars as I'd like to be able to see. But I can make out some of the bigger ones. And so I'm now go outside, look at what, I'll look at least a section, or maybe like let's say I look into the west, and so I have a little, I look into the south, so I have a little bit of the southeast and a little bit of the southwest, is that kind of that point of vision. And I try and get that in my mind. Then I come in, I look at Stellarium, and so now I'm starting to teach myself what the constellations look like. And if I keep on doing it throughout the year, I'll also know as we go through it what they look like. And right now Scorpio was kind of like this last night, a little bit over the horizon. And then watching the Big Dipper, and then learning that the tail of Draco begins kind of like off. If you look at the Big Dipper, the outward part of the tip of what would be the Dipper part, right above that, or depending on how it's tilted, begins the tail of Draco, and Draco is a very long constellation. So I'm teaching myself the constellations, because the sky map is a primary tool of understanding the moods of the mother and how she communicates. So, Akash, I hope that answers your question. I mean, again, my big awakening. I mean, I started my magical path at 17. That's a few years ago. But my first real one was in, I think it was July of 1988. And then beginning the Gaian navigation experience was a whole other true awakening. And then getting involved in the moon cycles, from the inception of the change in the shift of each new moon, and what that means for the mood and direction and theme of each lunar cycle, has led to just another level of, I guess we'll call it, deepening of the awakening. Yes, there is a lot of changing of words. So it's just for that one of the things about being able to communicate like this is we'll tell ourselves what words mean for us. Fuck them. I mean, we know they're up to no good. So we can pick words of common usage, and we'll start how humans do things, not with laws, with agreements. We reach agreements, and so we'll make our own linguistic. We'll have our own linguistic ways. I'm about Torah is law. Tao or Tao, if you want to say it that way, is way. We are way-based. There is Sophia's ways, the ways of the planetary animal mother. And then we have our ways that we reach through agreements with each other. And having each other's backs, approaching each other with a fierce love, where if anybody gets out of line, we give them a little growl. We let them know. It's not that we don't love you, but somebody, we need to be able to be really honest with each other. And there's a certain kind of animal honesty that isn't about holding grudges. It's just there's a certain, where if one animal's does something wrong, the other animal might growl, might hiss, might even quick little paw thing. It's not an anger. It's not not a grudge going on. It's get back in line. And again, when we're acting in community the way humans do, it's not one-on-one most of the time. We are all there to keep each other together, to watch each other's backs, if one of us gets a little lame psychologically, there's support there. Yeah, for me, the stellarium is again, if you have, like, in other words, if you had a true celestic, like if we could go out into a clear night sky with somebody like John Lasher or Foxadre also knows the sky quite well, and we can stand beside them and we're going, all right, what am I looking at? And they go, well, that's that, and that's that, and those stars make up the corner parts, and that's the big, if we had somebody standing right, if we had a teacher beside us, that would be the real way of teaching. And with that, without that, we do have the sky, and then we have stellarium. So you go out, and there's a drop-down menu. I Googled my town not Googled it. I looked it up in Wikipedia, and every town has the coordinates of the degrees, minutes, and seconds. Okay. So I got those three things, and I loaded them into Stellarium so that the sky I'm looking at is the same sky that Stellarium presents to me as if I'm standing in my own yard. And so that becomes your teacher in lieu of having the best thing, which is somebody who looks up there and knows it and can talk to you about it. And you can ask questions. Stellarium just allows you to compare notes. I saw this. And then you see this, and you're going, oh, gee, there's a lot more stars up there than I'm seeing because of the light pollution. And I'm following the chat peripherally. Overall, it seems to be fine in there. So yeah, with language, it's time for us to, we will give meanings to the sounds that we utter, which we call words. Hello, soul traveler. So, and so, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I started out, you know, as the somebody who's been who's been aimed since 2000, or improving my aim since 2011 or late 2010. And if it sounds like I'm speaking in code, Gnostic is not what the Gnostics called themselves. Gnostic was a pejorative term from the less informed people around them who were annoyed by these very scholarly, well-informed people. So Gnostic was this appellation, or, you know, this kind of pejorative term thrown at those. It kind of meant the know-it-alls. Oh, here come those with their gnosis. And if, you know, like when people are kind of enjoying the bliss of their ignorance, and then somebody comes along and starts dispelling some of that bliss, that's usually not met with great joy. I mean, if ignorance is bliss, people don't want their bliss disturbed, so disturbing the ignorance is to disturb the bliss. So what we now call Gnostics, what they called themselves, were telestai, Telestai, and the plural of that, I guess, would have been the telestes. I could be wrong in that, but telestai is certainly that's a correct term, and it means those who are aimed. So they were following their gnosis. Their gnosis, and when they were aiming for wisdom, they were aimed at wisdom. They were aimed at, in their language, Sophia, or there's Sophia as it's normally pronounced, Sophia, to differentiate between the aeon and the actual word wisdom, but they mean the same thing. I'll put it in there. I mean, Madfinger, can you put Teleste in there for us, so I don't have to type in there? Or Foxadre, if you're still here. I mean, I know you have the same terms that I'm working with. And so when I'm saying about my aim has been improving, that's so rather than as a Gnostic, I'm describing myself as a Telestai, and also because there are Gnostics who I guess have every right to call themselves Gnostics, who are working kind of with the full texts as they are found in the Nag Hammadi texts, and I don't know where the bullseye is in those texts. Like I said, I got really plugged in because on Aeon Gnostic Bites, and Miguel Connor is the Gnostic over there, and he started out about, as we figure out what we do on this crappy little planet. Man, you want to piss off a Gnostic, refer to our planet as a crappy little planet. So I just said, and rather than kind of call, I just said, okay, you're entitled to your own opinion, but it ain't a crappy little planet to me. This is my mother. This is our home. This is our mother. This is our home. And crappy little planet, not in my world. Thank you, Madfinger. I was spelling it with an I at the end instead of an E, but I'm quite sure that spelling is also correct, or mine was incorrect. Didn't a group of people try to get rid of the Gnostic religion? Yes, the Abrahamic religions as a group have been doing their best to get rid of them, especially once it got to Christianity, because then they had the numbers. But it has an older origin. They just the infection was able to spread, especially once Rome made it an official religion. The most suppressed mythos on the planet is that the planet is alive, and the planet is our creator too, or at least one of two parts. But you know, it's I don't the Sophianic narrative is a story. I am not a storyteller. I am not a teacher. I am a Gnostic or Teleste sharing my Gnostic path with other interested people and other Teleste or Telestai, and because right now I recognize one Gnostic teacher, and that's John Lamb Lash. Very simply. Carl Jung has Gnostic influences, but I think he had to look into. I think he had to look into some of the dreaming, but didn't have the I don't know, landmark. I don't have the proper word, but in other words, he looked at something and formed an opinion of what he saw, but ends up being a little garbled. But you know, if you're going into the world of regular psychology, then Carl Jung is at least not a crazy place to go. Yeah. Seven Serpents said something. I'm not following everything, because if I follow the chat too close, I will definitely get off where I'm trying to stay on. Yeah, I know. I heard, and I'm, you know, see, Ben is entitled to his opinion. You know, he was kind to me. He didn't come out against me. He came, you know, and so I'm certainly, just because, you know, Ben is entitled to think what he wants about John Lash. I have my opinion, and he honored me holding him as a teacher. So if he wants to think John Lash is a fascist, then that's for him to. What am I going to do? Pick on him for it? No. And with the world kind of doing what it's doing now, with a certain fury being unleashed, I want to be gentle. I can afford to be, you know, again, yeah, if you heard the context, he was more than respectful towards me. For me to be anything less towards him would be really fucked up of me. Akash, no, I didn't get thrown off. I've been able to really kind of hold on, pretty much. I certainly like to follow. It's natural to me, but you know, we could call it a walkabout method of doing things. I didn't coin that term necessarily. Matter of fact, there's somebody in the chat who did coin that term. He knows who he is. But I have not felt particularly pulled off by any. I want there to be a certain dynamism in the chat, and also if it's all been good, Akash. No issues there. Yeah, Oswald, you know, one of the things I think we will all do ourselves a favor is not using terms like left and right. Those are terms created by the social engineers. And so one of the things we have to disabuse ourselves of very quickly, if we're going to have any unity, is their concepts of left and right that people tend to pull themselves into. They're designed for people to pull themselves apart. Let's not do that. Let us not do that. If we disagree with a point that somebody's making, it's not because it's on a spectrum. It's because it's not working within the narrative that we are agreeing with and how we'll conduct ourselves with each other. Yeah, I would say that Raksha just put something very profound in there, and this is an important, I think, an important part to make. Jung as a shaman. If you're truly isolated, like sometimes, you know, you're in a small, relatively isolated tribe in some forest somewhere. I'm not going to just pick on the Amazon, and you're not in communication with other shaman or shaman to kind of dialogue with. You're on your own. You have to unpack everything by yourself. One of the reasons why the mystery schools had their great wealth of gnosis was you had multiple shaman from a relatively wide geographic area. They were able to come together, compare notes, unpack their dreaming, unpack their journeys, and come to a place where there was, okay, now we're getting the real picture here. Jung had nobody to unpack his shamanic journeys with, and I know that one of the great joys, besides having Raksha as a friend, is having somebody to sit with, to unpack my journeyings with. And there are more and more people starting to show up and wanting to partake in these kind of shamanic, not shamans, shamanic circles, to unpack our visions, the divinations we do. I mean, one of us will do a divination and share what we got from it, and then the other people who are also kind of familiar with that form, like the medicine cards, see things that we might not have seen because they see us a little differently than we see ourselves, so they can see applications we might miss. So we start unpacking all of this together as groups, and we get so much more. It is so much cleaner. And poor Jung had to do all of that unpacking by himself. Akash said something. I think that psychosis is a shamanic's reality. I think your introductions are sometimes during what I would call brain, psyche swelling, and maybe sometimes when we do that, we actually do swell our psyche a bit to trigger a deeper altered state. But it gets to the point where you control it. Like you go into that state, and then you come back and you reground. And that's the other things is sometimes when in those state you have like this huge package and you're like, oh boy, and then when you get back into your body, the package has shrunk considerably. Thank you, Foxadre. Foxadre, I would say that she put telestes is singular and telestai is plural. I did do a fairly good Oswald. I have one called JLL the Man, but I wouldn't call it's JLL the Man and the Message. I forget even what the title is, but I think it was a 5-hour live stream. It was like my marathon live stream. So, and I don't actually, we're coming, I don't want to do that. To me, 2 hours is plenty of live stream for somebody who, especially somebody who's not live. I think 2 hours is just about a good size package. I don't know that we could do these live streams in an hour. I think it would be too truncated. Sometimes in an hour is just when we as a group are all warming up. One of the things that really stands out about JLL, and probably, I don't know if we could call it a real comparison, to his credit, Michael Tsarian has put out quite a lot of work. And there's a lot of data in Tsarian's work that I think is certainly not a waste of time. Again, now he also draws a lot of conclusions with his data that I don't necessarily share. And even some of his data, I sometimes think, I don't know, we might be stretching things a little bit here. But he's certainly he certainly put out, a decent body of work. But when you're aware of what JLL has put out on metahistory.org alone, and then there's all of the talks on the GNE talks, the various interviews, and other, I mean, it is almost incomprehensible what JLL has put out as far as a library of Gnostic thought. And he's still doing live interviews and doing shows. I mean, it's impressive. I don't, even for those who think he's a fascist, man, touch his body of work before you start flinging. I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion, but when you look at the body of the work, if you can't be impressed at the work ethic and the quality and the scholarship and the dedication over the years, I mean, really now. No, I haven't heard Michael's guitar album, but I've always kind of enjoyed that. I think in some of his Unslaved podcasts, I see the guitar in the background. I love seeing a guitar in somebody's, that kind of stuff. And, especially those of us who do this kind of esoteric talk. And then when you see an instrument in the background, you realize that there's where the real magic is. Music is magical. Art is magical. Matter of fact, there's somebody who often is in the chat. They're not here tonight, so I won't mention them by name, but has sent me some art that they've done, and then sent me a pencil sketch that they're working on of me. Somebody's going to is doing me as an art subject, and so it's just really cool. Art is our magic. So I could, Tsarian could put in a real stinker of a podcast. Seeing that guitar behind him just makes me go, okay, so that one was a little bit but you play guitar, man. That's cool. Michael is a great intellect. I listen to Michael all the time. Michael just, like I said, I put him as a comparison. I don't quite, to me it's a little, not quite a fair comparison, but to me the one person that came to mind when I think of a body of work as compared to John Lamb Lash is Michael Tsarian. As somebody who's actually, decided to walk a path to be a scholar in their own fashion, and then doing the work, and his tarot series. I mean, again, a work ethic is something to be admired. Okay, good night, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. And, I mean, like a Sam, you're like, oh, Ayn Rand, I haven't spent a lot of time going through her stuff because I don't need to know what Ayn Rand thought. I read, I get a quote here, a quote there, and sometimes I'll read a quote and I go, oh, that's pretty good. I'll read another quote, go, oh, come on. My path is to stay as much in the dreaming of the planetary animal mother as possible. And I want to listen to people who are involved in the dreaming. And people of good, strong intellect who are doing the work. And right now, and at the top of my list of people to listen to is the Gnostic teacher, John Lionel Nash. You know, and then the word philosopher. I mean, philosophy means lover of wisdom, or a wisdom file, a Sophia. And so, you know, wisdom is Sophia, and Sophia is wisdom. And if you're not kind of plugged into what our narrative is, what our Earth walk is, how this planet's here, why we're here, how we got here, how we're connected, your philosophy is a little on the weak side. I don't know if anybody knew that the teacher of Socrates was a woman. Socrates' teacher was a woman. I'm quite sure a woman, a priestess of the mysteries. By the way, Enjoy Being, I'm just going to give him some props. I don't know if he's leaving or not. He's from New Zealand. That's what the NZ stands for. And he did some work on the sets for, I think both The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But I know it was either both or one of the movies. So he was involved in creating the visuals. Part of, the multiple teams. I mean, there were, hundreds of people there. But I just thought I'd share that with people about Enjoy Being NZ. At this point, people like Blavatsky, whatever she had to offer was in her time. And if you're, I mean, I think, if you don't want to spend time in developing your aim in Sophia's dreaming, then the Dark Journalist has done some great work in that direction. I listened with interest because it was, certainly of a good quality of dissertation, but we don't need Helena anymore. I think it's a distraction. No, I'm not familiar with John Michael Greer of the Arch Druid Report blog. I don't go to I'm a very happy Telestai, or Telestis, singular. And I have found nourishment, super learning, greater magic, and gnosis, that comfort that comes from knowing where you are in the cosmos, where you have plenty more questions about understanding more detail within the dreaming, but the endless kind of existential questions, they're answered. So when you have your existential questions answered, you're not all over the place anymore. You're aimed. You have an idea of where that bullseye is. Manly P is another person that there are certain people who, when I just want some downtime, just like a little relaxation, I'm not doing shamanic work and other types of things, Manly P Hall is somebody that I can listen to with and be, enjoy. And he says things that trigger some things. There's, especially when you're listening to people like that, there are little pieces of information that actually fit quite well into the Sophianic narrative. And, the use of my time is really crucial to me. And right now, I'm in a songwriting period, and I want much of my inspiration to be based on its Dakini shifts. I want the moods of the mother to start finding their way into the many songs I have that need words. So I'm not looking for new people. I'm really not looking for new people to be interested in, because when I listen, it's just like, you know, they're kind of going off on a tangent. And when you're a telestis, you have an aim. And when somebody's like not even shooting at the target, it's like, you know. But if you don't know what the target is that you want, then you're gonna, you know, you'll be looking around until maybe you feel somebody has satisfied what your target is. I have my target. And again, you know, I might like, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, but the fury has begun on this planet. It has just begun, and we have focus would help us a lot. Gaia has no. The only problem Gaia has with the Archons is their influence on our psychology. It's not her battle to win, it's our battle to win with her. And by entering into her dreaming, sharing the dreaming with her, and understanding what that infection is, they are defeated. But that's why it's about collective consciousness. If you have a small group of people who have managed to get rid of that crap, and the rest of the world is stark raving archontically mad, you got a problem. Which might bring us back to some of the fury of the earth right now. I don't want to go too far into that, because we will, instead of getting ahead of ourselves, or even myself, in speaking about what might be coming, we can just follow the news and we'll see what's happening. At least as far as, you know, news regarding what's happening with earth movements and things. All right, Sam. You know, something in the comment section. You can't do it in chat, but in the comment section you can leave me a link. Why just leave it to me? Let other people listen to it also. So leave me a comment after this, and, you know, link us. You know, we'll give you some thumbs up. So I hope that was a satisfying answer for you, Akash. I think you've asked, you know, really solid questions. I mean, I'm more than happy to field questions like that. And we're in the process. Well, you can't. People cannot post links in a live chat, but they can post links in the comment section when this video ends. There are comments you can make in a video. It'll probably, when he first puts it in there, it'll probably register as possible spam, and then I okay it, and then it shows up. The perennial philosophy is where I wandered for most of my magical life, starting at 17. I would say the biggest part of what I was doing was learning more and more of the perennial philosophy. But then there's the real, to me, there's the real perennial, which is earth-based, based in, you know, Gaia Sophia, and then there is the perennial wisdom that got added on later by the followers of sky gods. I won't. You know, there are certain people whose names I recognize in my chat, so I won't say certain things. But the perennial wisdoms got polluted. But once you know what the pollution looks like, what kind of language it uses, it becomes pretty easy to pick it out. Yellowstone, it's interesting. People, like, who's been covering Yellowstone a bit? Rex Bear on Leak Project. So, a geyser that's been dormant is suddenly alive again. So what? It wouldn't have been a geyser in the past if it wasn't supposed to geyser once in a while. And when it was identified as a geyser in the past, like say, oh, it hasn't been active in 14 years. Okay, the last time was it active was Yellowstone blowing up? That's where the fear porn comes in, from knuckleheads, who occasionally Rex Bear can be a knucklehead. He's a nice guy, but he can be a little bit of a knucklehead. And so, and he's going for, he's going for the views, and he's no jerk. He knows what clickbait is, and he's one of the clickbait masters out there. I'll call him one of the clickbait masturbators. Again, I like the guy. I'm subscribed to him. I mean, I have a subscription to Leak Project, okay? So I don't subscribe to someone who I don't like. I like the guy. But, I kind of have his number. And he's caught up in a little bit, the subscribers. And I do have a little suspicion of anything that has the word project in it. Whether it's Project Avalon, Project Camelot, Project Paperclip, or Leak Project. But, look, if he has, his groupies, I'll call them. And those are the people that, people like me aren't going to give him, the following that he has. So if he ignores people like me, I expect him to ignore people like me. I'm a pain in the ass to somebody like him, and that's okay. Thank you, Raksha, and thank you, Sam. I mean, I do try to keep the energy relatively decent while being authentic. And that's why sometimes I'm almost going to say something like, there's really no need to go there. I mean, I can sometimes be, I know how to be a little provocative, and there's a time for it, and I don't think a live stream is the best time. If I'm going to poke, I'm going to poke at the problems, not at somebody in a chat. People in the chat, they're us. And we need unity, and we're not going to get unity sticking each other or sticking it to each other. We have a common adversary, and to me, that adversary is something that we should put a little bit of our warrior suit on at whatever level and say, no more. And then when we're done with the job, never again. The extermination of both the narrative and the people who kept the narrative was, an absolute genocide disaster that happened over centuries and centuries. And I think anybody who's ever been selected is certainly will say there's a period where you say no more, and there's a period where you say never again. But no more comes first, because there's work to be done. And then when the work is done, never again. And that's when the totem of the bull moose to keep the perimeter safe comes in. Just in case you think I'm riffing here, the planetary animal totem, actually, if you would go to Mandela Effect Decoded and just look at the list of videos, There's one with a albino bull moose on it, and I think that's a very fit. If you understand the medicine of moose, you would understand why that is a very, very fitting planetary totem. Because the stamina of moose is required for there to be a no more. Because it's, you know, there's a battle to be engaged and won, and it's a battle of psychology. But even to keep up the psychic steam, the psychological steam, the steam of the psyche requires endurance. Yes, Oswald. Actually, I mean, early on, John Lash wrote the book. If you want the book, it's called Not in His Image, and he opens up with James Lovelock's ecology. You know, James Lovelock in many ways opened a door, an important door, to at least understanding the planet as an organism, a basic organism. And that's a pretty good start, because even as an organism, I mean, look, people love dogs, so you know, if you can love your dog, you can love your planet, even if you do not ascribe a lot more to it, like that the Sophianic narrative does. But it all starts with truly loving the planet, because if you truly love your planet, and then you see this tiny section of society and their minions actually attacking it and destroying it, this anti-life mentality, just like you would want to protect your dog, you'll at least have the emotional response to protect your planet. So even at the most basic, recognizing the planet as an organism that was done in James Lovelock's work, it's a start for anybody. If everybody on the planet had that basic concept, we would be well on our way to never again, and pretty much don't know more. Let me tell you some, Akash, about David Icke and his archons. And this is John Lash is the one who introduced archon into the modern lexicon. It's part of the ancient lexicon, and that's where he got the term. The fact that David Icke plays with the word archon and does not ascribe it to where it re-entered our modern vocabulary from John Lamb Lash, and the backstory that goes with it, in many ways because of that irresponsibility on the part of David Icke regarding the archon story, he's full of shit. He is full of shit when it comes to the archons. Not that they exist, but the whole story around them. There's a really clean, unconfusing narrative, with even how they arose in the cosmos, and he's not on it. So when it comes to, I mean, I don't have any personal, bad blood against it, but when it comes to the archon thing, anybody out there who's archoning it and not knowing that you wouldn't be using the word today had John Lash not reintroduced it. Because Elaine Pagels, who was one of the first people to get a hold of the Nag Hammadi text, wouldn't go near it, because to explain the archons would go against her Christian cosmology. And that's one of the reasons why she left the archons alone. Because to make them real, you have to explain the Sophianic cosmology, and she wasn't going there because she was Christian. It is John Lamb Lash who brought the word archon, why they're here, how they work, into the modern language. As far as I'm concerned, everybody else is plagiarizing. He's, again, he jokes when he puts up things. He'll put copy lefted, a copy left by John Lamb Lash. There's a wink there, and he didn't use the word copyright. But the fact is, he is the one. Anybody else could, Elaine Pagels could have done it, but she didn't do it. John Lash did it. So that's it. Okay, this isn't about making him some special. It's just credit where credit is due. So when it comes to the Archons, who they are, where they're from, how they got here, how they're whole part of, there is natural in many ways an occurrence as animal life. I mean, there's a whole gnosis that goes with them, and a real narrative and a story. And the rest of the people talking Archons are talking out their ass, and they're talking about them and turning them into demons, and maybe they're jinn, and maybe, oh man, it is sickening. I know John Lash is doing the work he's doing. The biggest problem is people do not want to throw the trash out in their psyche. They want to maybe they want to do, there's a smorgasbord of cosmology, and that's what you see in the Nag Hammadi text. The Nag Hammadi text, many of the tracks there are a smorgasbord of Gnostic and Judeo-Christian magic concepts. And so much of it is people just don't want to go there. If they do that, that's why the Nag Hammadi texts are often what people are more comfortable with, because it's a mishmash. And it's certainly not promoted. That's for sure. I mean, think about it. So David Icke is going there, Archon this, and he doesn't even give a single prop. I mean, it's not like John Lash wants him to send him a fucking royalty check. But how about crediting where the guy came from, and then further credit of not taking this phenomenon of our earthly existence, and then just just treating it like a fairy tale, and you make up your own stories about it, which is what David Icke has done. Hello, Kalendal, and hello, Robin. Boy, the way you just entered together is like, you just came back, you just woke up together. Yeah. Okay, so I'm at 2 hours and 8 minutes. So we're this stream. What are we gonna do? I mean, I think we addressed some of it. I mean, there's a Bilderberg meeting coming up in Italy. Was it Venice? I forget, whatever, Venice maybe. And if you ever wanted to practice a little magic, in this case counter magic, you have a target, you have a date. Spread the word. I mean, minimally. How about the toilets again? How about all the toilets back up at whatever hotel you're staying at? How about that? I mean, if you don't feel really angry, backed up toilets would really piss them off. Okay, so anyway, that's it. What are we gonna do? Well, we're one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna see the Earth. We're gonna see some Earth fury, and it's not gonna be pleasant. It's not gonna be anything to celebrate. But it's going to be very real, and it's part of the cleansing. And it didn't really have to quite be this way, but people have made choices, or just me. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm grateful for anybody. Just something. Everybody's favorite villains are having one of their summits. Again, we can either be empowered and have some warrior spirit about it, or it's like, oh, what are they planning to do to us next? Fuck what they're planning. There's not enough of them to pull it off if we unify. If we stay arguing about this and left and right and all this other crap, well, they have a better chance. If we decide, you know what? It's the human species. It's our planet. They hate the planet. They hate life. They hate us. They would like to see us gone. Get fucking pissed about it. Let's unite on being pissed at them and be victims no more. All right. That's my final little bit of rage there. Love you all, and thank you for again. These last chats have just really been great, people are getting to know each other in the chat, and it's really, and we're on this. We're kind of having the same basic conversation. It isn't like I'm having one conversation and there's something else going on in chat. We're all we're focusing now. Let me tell you, focus is great. And that's exactly what any adversary we have wants to do, is break our focus. Well, how about you guys focus on this subject and you guys focus on this, and then after you focus on it, you come back and disagree about what no, let's stop that. We agree that we love each other. We're the human species. This is the planet that we are supposed to be on. We're both under attack. Let's not just say, oh, no. Because as one unit, we are really something to be feared by those who would instill fear in us. Good night. Oh, that's right. I have to stop the stream here.